So I'm going to forego the intro. I've got two other episodes with you, and we got a lot to talk about. So I just want to dive right into it. I know you. I know you personally. We're actually friends in real life outside of podcasting. And knowing your story and knowing like your entrepreneurial story, like it's defined by resilience. And I'm curious to know, as someone who I would argue their career is defined by resilience, with the fires in LA and your experience with that, what did the last 2 weeks teach you about yourself? And how are you going to apply whatever that lesson is moving forward?
You know, thanks. We are IRL real friends, which I really love, Josh. It's so funny because I have been through so much, and I was just thinking. So I lost my home in the fire, and my brother lost his home in the fire, and we actually split all of my recently deceased mother's stuff between the two homes, and none of it made it. And, the first day after the fire, my brother calls me, and he's in a really big panic, and I felt the same energy. I felt pretty sad and just really depressed. And like 3 days later, we both decided that we were done with the grieving process. And I thought about it and I was like, the Shemtob boys, you can't hold them down for too long. And I think that's the resilience undertone of what it is, which is I'm still grieving. In fact, every day I'm splitting my time between the things that are aftermath from the fire, which is working with insurance, working with the people to come clean up the space, finding our new home, doing all that stuff. It's taking over a lot of my free time, but it's something that I know I'll solve for. And I know I've been in tough places before, and I know I'll be in tough places again. And I think it's being able to regulate through those difficulties that allows you to be able to see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
And for those that don't know you, we'll give a little bit of context. I'll do it for you. You own a food truck empire, you own a catering company, you own brick and mortar restaurants, you own a shoe company, and you're a published author. Did I miss anything? I didn't miss anything, did I? Did I
No,
miss
no, just a
anything?
dog dad maybe for now.
Right. And a dog dad and a soon to be father, and you're married. I would say that your career has been defined by big risks, most of which have been calculated. Um, what do you think is a risk that you took that may have seemed reckless at the time, but turned out to just be a pivotal moment in your career?
In the last 15 years or in the most recent times?
I would say probably in the last 5 years.
Yeah. I think starting the footwear business was really a wild business to start, because it's just such a highly competitive and difficult business to get into. And so that one turned out to be what I spend most of my time on now, and I'm really grateful for, and I'm able to make an impact in the community. And I think the thing that I remember really well, so ordering 6,000 pairs of shoes as my first order, which everyone told me is absolutely insane. And I remember being in China when COVID was breaking out. And so I had ordered them coincide. January 6th, I was in China picking up the order. And, COVID kind of happened in China right around that time and then extended here. And we got the shipment basically in March. And I said, you know what? There's no way we're going to sell these shoes to the hospitality and medical industry right now because they don't have any money and they're all freaking out. So let's just go and give away as many of the shoes as we can and give away free meals. And right away, that was a catalyst to selling out 6,000 pairs of shoes in the next 2 months, which no one told me I can do. And so I took a big risk. I even realized that when we got the product that it might have been too big of a risk. And then I decided to give back to the community, and that ended up selling all the product. And so I'm thinking back at that as like a memory to what I'm doing today. And it's just it paid off, but I would have never seen that or been able to foreshadow that would happen.
When I started that virtual reservationist company all those years ago, which you know about, it made me a better restaurateur. It gave me a different worldview to look at my job, to look at the industry, to look at all of these different things. And so I look at your career and I say, like, what could owning a shoe brand teach you about being a restaurateur? And what could being a restaurateur do to make you better at running a shoe brand? What skills have been transferable, and how has one role improved the other?
This question because I feel like anyone who's in the restaurant business has been prepping for any business that they'll ever do ever, because The restaurants, the amount of variables and things you have to control, you have to learn how leasing works, retail works, employees work, the state of California, if that's where you're at, or whatever your state is. You have to learn how cost of goods work, how aging inventory, because your inventory goes bad in 2 to 5 days, depending on what you're putting in there. Those are so challenging that if you can grasp and run a P&L in a restaurant, you can run a P&L in almost any other company. And so I feel really blessed because I think the school of hard knocks is the restaurant industry. And once you've learned that, I mean, Josh, think about you as a podcast operator, you come in there as a new person and you're able to grow quickly. I'm sure it's because of the things you know how to do, from the media side, but running a restaurant probably primed you in a way that you never expected, right? And so I feel like that's definitely the basis of it all. But what's interesting is the footwear business has taught me marketing in a way that I had never thought. Like running a consumer brand that's like a product teaches you a lot about how brand, how emotion, how marketing can really impact things, and then learning how to use digital marketing and general brand marketing in the restaurant space, where I would say they're not as talented. I think the restaurant operators, I think marketing is a little bit of a struggle for them from what I've seen, and why you've found such a great niche, because it is a great thing to give marketing skills to a restaurant operator. So that's carried over on the other side, I would say.
And we're here to talk about your new book, Food Truck Mogul. Um, so, I mean, like, I know you. Like, it took you a long time to write this book. And writing a book is very much a thankless process. It's a selfless thing to do. Most published authors don't make a dollar off their book. So you do it because you have something you want to share with the world. What inspired you to write it?
I have been and I am 15 years a food truck operator, and it's almost half my life at this point. We were very early on the scene. We weren't the earliest, but we were definitely in that first year of food trucks that were kind of rolling out, and we're one of the only lasting brands that have been there for that long. And every month, every week, every couple of days, I get someone reaching out to me. Hey, I really want to start a food truck. What do you think? Hey, I'm thinking about buying a food truck for my business. What do you think? And I thought about it and I was like, I have all this great data to give. And I've done so much in the industry that I feel like I'm one of the most knowledgeable people about food trucks. And I want to give that back to people. And I want someone who wants to start a food truck to start with more of a base than I did. I mean, when I started, I didn't even know that you need to put propane in the food truck, right? That's the first story you read about it. That's a true story. I didn't know you needed propane in that truck. So I came from not knowing you needed propane to understanding how to grow a food truck in another country. And so I've done the full genesis of the experience, and I feel like that's at the point where you want to give back to people. And you introduced me to someone who is this great operator who's thinking about adding a food truck, and I saw myself wanting, more than he even wanted to ask me about help, I wanted to give it. And so I think it's my nature to want to help people. But in this case, I have so much wisdom and experience that it's a shame for people not to take it. And if you're starting a food truck, this is the book for you. This is all the knowledge that I can give you.
Well, you present some contrarian ideas in the book, especially as it relates to starting and running the food truck. What's your favorite piece of advice in the book that kind of goes against conventional wisdom?
Yeah, so I think it's jump in the pool and learn how to swim. I think most people want you to have analysis paralysis when starting a business. You need every plan, every detail dialed in, every note. And I think that doesn't really work as being an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur means you have to kind of get in there and get a little dirty and get uncomfortable. And I think entrepreneurs know that, but people who want to be an entrepreneur don't. And I would say that's the biggest thing is it's you're gonna figure it out if you're 100% present for the experience. Try to do as much homework as you can. I don't recommend just jumping in with no experience, but get your few pieces dialed in, and then know that once you're in there, you're gonna start figuring it out. And I think I talk about doing that, but also mitigating risks. So like, don't go buy this most expensive truck and see if it's going to work. If you're going to be the kind of person who tests it out, make sure that your liability is low. If you're leasing a truck, you're talking about maybe 6 months of payments. That's $18,000. That's not $180,000. It's 10% of that. So spend less and see what happens. And then as you're figuring it out, you could start to spend more money. I just bought a $270,000 truck. I didn't do that 15 years ago. Like I did that because I know my business.
Well, let's talk about that. So I interviewed this guy, Sean Aldridge, and he said something, advice that I should have taken a couple of times in my career, and didn't, and then learned. But when he said it, it immediately resonated. And I know you found yourself in a similar place at one point in your career. He said, I would never do anything again that would destroy me. Like I would never take a risk so big that like it could obliterate, everything that I own, everything that I have, all of that. That's for the 21-year-olds listening right now. They can do that because there's just not that much to lose. But one of the things that I thought was so valuable about the book as it relates to risk, is that where was it? I want to pull it up. That you called out all of these misconceptions about a food truck, especially like food trucks relative to risk, right? That people think that it's this thing that just anybody can get into. Talk to me about the misconceptions that you tried to tackle to avoid risk, to save pain.
Are you talking specifically about like how most people think that you're just going to jump in a food truck and make a crazy amount of money? Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah, most
sure.
food trucks fail. And not only that, most food trucks have bad business plans. And it's not easy to build a business on going to new locations, and tweeting or posting on social media where you're going to be when Instagram's algorithm doesn't even allow you to be in front of everybody. Like, like the system is broken for food truck operators to just show up. And so your biggest strength is going to be catering, is going to be locking down locations where you get cross traffic. And even then, it's going to take a while to build. And so I think the misconception of food trucks are easy. This is the best business to kind of get started on. It has low overhead. I think some of that is true. Like, yes, you're not, if you're, I pay for on average per truck $3,000 a month. My average restaurant lease was 14, like 15
Right.
grand a month. So it's 5 times more expensive to have that. And you have to sign a 5 to 10 year lease depending on where you're located. And in a food truck, you don't have to do that. So your balance sheet liability, which like means like, yeah, your overall debt is going to be less in a food truck, but your operating expenses are going to be high. Like, and it's the same labor, it's the same locations, the same cost of goods. And those are stretched thinner because you're not in the same location every day. And so I would say that's the misconception that a food truck, I don't think a food truck is easier than a restaurant. I think you have more flexibility, which allows for more upside if you are adaptable. But I don't think it actually is easier in any way.
You focus a lot on branding in the book as well. And again, I've known you for years and years and years. The branding on the Lime truck has evolved with time. What was the most important branding decision you made for the Lime truck? And how do you think it influenced the business?
I think the most important. I think it's kind of funny because it's the color. I think lime green was really the basis of it, and it's just permeated through my life. Like everything I see that's lime green or green, I'll just gravitate towards it. So I think having a color can be really impactful. But I would say the biggest thing about the brand, and its evolution is adaptability. When we launched, we did a brand new menu every day. That wasn't sustainable. Then we picked a category that we thought we did well and people really responded well, which is California Mexican. And we were the first, I don't want to say the first, but I would definitely say in the first handful of people that were doing upscale tacos. Because every review on my Yelp, if you go back to 15 years ago, is $4 for a taco. These people are insane. I had a duck confit taco for $4, and it was the best taco I've ever had, but I'm not sure it was worth it. I was like, for $4, it's not worth it. Like, and so now that's table stakes for most taco places. And so I think we kind of really branded the high end taco, and that was really great for years 1 through 4, right? But then everybody started doing it, and I realized at that time what was going to make us different. And then when I hit my 10-year mark, I had an existential crisis thinking about the impact I've made on the world because I didn't think I'd ever be in business for 10 years. And so what's cool about the brand is me in a lot of ways, right? And your brand is you, and every operator and entrepreneur, the brand is ultimately an extension of who they are unless it's really taken on its own level and they're huge businesses. And when you have that ability, you have to stay adaptable. what worked 15 years ago didn't work a month ago. And it's like, we just decided to go to no seed oils. I didn't even know what a seed oil was 15 years ago, right? Like, and
Sure.
so I think that was a level of my awareness, realizing that these aren't good for you. And when I eat really bad quality oil, I get really bloated and I feel really sick. And I was like, why would I ever want someone to leave my food truck feeling that way? And yes, it's 5 times more expensive for that carton of oil that was $40 versus 240, but that's how shitty it got, right? How refined oil got so bad that they could make it for $40. That's not what it should be. And so I think making stands like that, that's an adaptable brand, but it's also an extension of my beliefs and what I think is important.
Yeah, I want to talk about marketing. I was rereading Good to Great recently with Jim Collins. And one of the things that he talks about in depth is this idea of like return on luck. And that the best companies in the world have a higher return on luck. That we all get lucky. But the best companies in the world just do a lot more with that opportunity than the standard company. And so we look at the Great Food Truck Race, which is this national platform for what is a very localized business. So I think on the outside, it's easy to say, oh, well, they got national exposure. So, like, that's why it was so successful. But the trucks weren't national, the trucks were hyper local at the time. Talk to me about what that initial experience was and how you got the most out of it.
Yeah. So it's a great question. You win this national show and you get all this awareness and people that are all of a sudden signing up for your email in Tennessee and in Florida. And you're sitting there and you're like, how am I going to reach these people? And it's a waste to get 2 million views on your brand and not be able to connect with them in any way. And so when we started our food truck, we got asked to be on the Great Food Truck Race season 2. I had a week to get on the show. That's how much time they gave me. And we had only been operating for a year. I mean, I just had turned 21, I think, at that time. So it was like a very long time ago, right? And I didn't do much with it. I mean, I maxed out my food trucks. I bought 2 more food trucks when we got back. So like I was as prepped as I could be, but it was Orange County was our footprint. This time around, I knew it was different. And I said, hey, I'm going to get all this national exposure for the second time. I had been through this. What did I learn? I learned that I want to operate and create more. So I decided this time to write the book, to make a masterclass, and to franchise the food trucks so that we have national exposure and that we can open food trucks across the US. And I changed our supply chain so that we can create products in New York and Florida and Texas. And we're able to do all of that now and we're starting to sell those. And so that was a really big opportunity for capitalize on the marketing that you get and then making sure that you are elevating that experience because again you're going to get all these eyeballs, you better do something with them or it's kind of wasted, which is what we learned 13 years ago.
Let's talk about the franchising aspect because I think it's super interesting, but it's a very different business model because you're not serving customers, you're serving business owners, you're serving franchisees, which is just a very different world for you, for anyone that finds themselves in that position. What have you learned through the process?
Oh, okay. So one, my biggest passion outside of food and fashion is entrepreneurship and small business. I love it. I think it's the most impactful thing in the US. And so the idea of supporting franchisees and giving them tools to make them successful and collaborating with them on ideas that they get to bring to the table, it actually excites me. It makes me feel like I can make an impact in the community that I love the most. And so that alone was a huge realization of why franchising I thought could be so valuable to the brand. And what I learned also is that I am not a franchisor. Although I'm becoming one, I need people around me who are. And so the first thing I did was I brought in someone with 25 years of franchising experience. And I said, hey, I can give you exactly why the Lime Truck's successful. I can give you all the tools that I know about the operating business, but you got to come in and be the best franchisor. And when I saw the way he looks at the business, and this is the president of our company, Bill, and how he thinks about franchisees and how he comes from an immigrant family that built from nothing. Like he is the American dream in a lot of ways of these franchisees. I knew he was the perfect person. But as we've learned as a great operator, I'm really good at making great dishes, but I'm not really great at sitting and coaching and training and operating every day, and I need other people to do that. And so that's the first thing I realized, is that someone with franchising experience can really help me be a better franchisor.
What does your day to day look like? I mean, I know it's different now because of the fires, but for me, Daniel, it's the lesson, that lesson, that lifelong lesson that you just constantly learn week after week, year after year. For me, it's about focus. And so what I found is I can do many different things as long as I focus on the same element in those many different things. So what is that for you?
Well, I mean, every day varies. It's a gnarly list that's really organized by different quadrants. It's I think it is focused. So like what I would say I learned through my career, and it's kind of similar to what you said, and maybe a little bit different at the same time, is less initiatives. So if my organization was to crush one thing, what would that one thing be? And that's a tough question to ask. Like if you were to look at all your goals that you made for, 2025, what's the one that if you took that away, you would be like, "You know what? I missed the others, but that one was so important that I feel good about what I did." And I think before I was scared to ask that question because that's a big bet. You talk about a bet that can ruin it all. You pick the wrong one thing and it could potentially wipe out what you're building. And so I think that's the difference, is that right now I have two initiatives in Snips. I have one initiative in the Lime Truck. It's never been like that before. And so even though I have so many things to manage and I have so much to do, I know that if it's not leading up to that one thing, I'm not doing it. And my job is to build, I'm in business development ultimately, right? Like I'm not operating on the ground floor in any of my businesses. And so as long as that one thing is really clear, or those two things are really clear, I have a team to help me do it. I can go out and achieve. And so I think that's where focus, even though my focus is spread amongst different businesses and different thoughts, I'm only focused on one or two things per, and everyone in the company knows what those are, and everyone is aligned with that. And that makes it really easy to move forward.
So, when we talk about scaling, and it was a interview I did probably 50, 100 interviews ago. The guy said the only thing you need to worry about when it comes to scaling is stacking your bench. That's it. He's like, if you have great people, you're good. If you have mediocre people, no matter how good the business is, you're screwed. And so you are someone that I have watched diligently year after year, stacking your bench and not just bringing in like the best person full stop, but like bringing in the best person. And when they've outgrown the role or the role has outgrown them, making difficult decisions over time. Talk to me about how comfortable you are now with making uncomfortable decisions.
Good question. I'm still uncomfortable. It's
Same.
people. It's people, right? I love my employees. I handpicked every one of them. There's not an employee that gets hired in Snibs that doesn't deal with me directly, or there's not an employee that doesn't get hired in Lime Truck that doesn't deal with the president directly. Everyone gets hired because it's a small organization. That's the control we get, right? And that's the beauty of it. So letting go of that person that I made a decision on, that I'm vested in and that I've invested time and resources in, it's a very hard experience. But at the same token, like nobody is benefiting the other person if you both know it's not a fit. And so I think the hardest thing for me is to decide when I feel like, because sometimes you get that gut feeling and you don't react like until 6 months later or 3 months later. And what I've learned is that it's better to attack that feeling with the other person. And it sometimes makes them uncomfortable to say, "Hey, Josh, I like you. I'm really vested in you. I want your success, but we're not hitting the marks that we talked about. What's it going to take for you to hit them?" And if you can't hit them after that conversation, it's kind of like at that point, you're the one creating the problem as the business owner or as the manager. So I would say that's the part of like letting go and understanding when people don't fit anymore. I think stacking the bench, it's really weird because every time I meet somebody new, I'm always assessing like, is this a person that I could do business with? Because I like doing business with friends and people and people that I admire. And like I'm still looking for our perfect opportunity, Josh, where we get to work together.
For
Like and
sure.
so
Absolutely.
like, so I think I'm always stacking the bench with like great people. And it's funny because it's business acumen is the accelerator, but it's quality of human. That's the
For
baseline.
sure.
And
For
it's like
sure.
I want to make sure that everyone in my corner, I feel like is a good person, and then they have the business skill set to launch on top of that because life's short. And I think I got this great opportunity to do business with somebody that is a real scummy guy. And I had to talk to my wife about it for like 10 hours because the opportunity in front of me was so big. But I knew deep down in my heart at some point, this person who's a bad person is going to be a bad person again. And I can't blame them for that because I knew that going into it. And I just couldn't agree to make that deal. It's tough.
It is. It is. I was just having this conversation with Ari Weinswig. He was telling this story about how for Zingerman's Deli, Disney came to him years ago and was like, "Listen, we want to open a Disneyland in or a Zingerman's in Disneyland." And he was like, "Oh my God, that's amazing. No, thank you. We don't do that. We don't do business outside of Ann Arbor." And they were like, "No, man, you don't understand. Like, this one restaurant will do more than all of your other businesses combined. And
Sure.
we know how much the other businesses do." And he goes, "Really?" And they were like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Cool. But like, we're not going to do that. We're just not the right people." And so at this stage, you've reached a level of success where like you are drowning in amazing opportunities. That doesn't mean they're right for you. But outside of like the quality of the human presenting the idea, how do you decide what's an opportunity and what's a distraction?
Great question. Um, I have two objectives. One is cash flow, and the other is fulfillment. And so, if it really, I can't live without either, and I can't do something only for money. It won't work because I've tried that. I've actually tried it twice, and both times it burned up really quickly. And so, I've learned that if I don't have heart in it, it can't work. But I think it has to fill one of those buckets. If it's a cash flow idea and it is good for the world and it feels good to me, I will look at it. And if it's a business opportunity, I want to make sure it aligns with what I want deep down. My ultimate goal in life is to help startups, small businesses, and create opportunities that create cohesive experiences between consumer and the people serving that consumer. So like if I can help workers and create great product for workers that workers buy and create a nonprofit that gives back to workers and I could create this harmonious ecosystem, I know I want to do it. And I think that's what I'm looking at right now. And it's like this news company that, we've talked a little bit privately about, it helps the restaurant industry. I love the restaurant industry. I will do anything for our industry. Our industry is the most amazing industry in the world and shows up even when they don't get fed. Like their hospitality is beautiful. And so that fills my cup. And if it makes money too, then it's good. And that's why I'm actually now at this point, I've been getting other opportunities like in real estate and other things. And I don't know it as well. And so if it's just capital, okay, great. I could do that. But if I need to be involved, I almost want it to be surrounding food and the hospitality industry because I just love them so much and I know it will. So I don't know if that helps.
It it does. I
Yeah.
want to talk about catering.
Yes.
And the reason I want to talk about catering is because it came up in the book, but you and I have also talked about it privately. Here's where I think most people go wrong. They don't understand the drivers of profitability in their business, right? So, food truck operators that are busy on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, or Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They're focused on getting busy on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, as opposed to saying, how can I double sales on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday? Or is there a way to make a lot more money in one fell swoop at a much better margin? And in the food truck industry, by and large, it's catering. Catering is the driver of business for the lime truck. That is where the profitability comes from. But I don't think you did. I don't think anyone listening, anyone reading the book would think, "Oh, I want to become a professional caterer. I'll start a food truck." But that is the core business. For those that do it well, for those that do it at scale, for those that actually make money, they figured that out. I have tried to use that model in all facets. In every business I'm in, I spend all of my time trying to figure out like what's the core driver of profitability in this business. It's what I do for my clients because some people have a four-wall restaurant and I'm like, "No, you're a manufacturing business. You need to focus on catering." Or, "No, you need to focus on private events." You look at Neil Fraser with Redbird, right? He opened a 60-seat restaurant with like 18 PDRs in it. Like he's an event space. He just uses the restaurant to market the event space, which is brilliant. So talk to me about that. Talk to me about how you came to that conclusion and then how you continually focus on these kind of unseen drivers of profitability.
You know, with the food truck, It was more about mitigating risk because what would happen was we would go to an event and that same event Tuesday for lunch would be 600, next week 1300, next week 1700, then back down to 600. And it's impossible to plan for that. You don't know how much staff to have on the truck, you don't know how much food to have on the truck, how many cabbages to prep, things that are going to be thrown away at the end of service. And so I started to sit there and I was like, I don't like running my business like this because I'm throwing away food, which feels terrible. I'm not making any money, which is also feels terrible, and I'm not giving good service to my customers because when it's $1,700 and I've only planned for a $600 event, I don't have the right amount of people, and so I started to realize the variables of the business I didn't like, and then I saw with catering, every event we do is consistent. I know it well. We make good money, and so it was just obvious in the operations that I saw the opportunity, and I started to assess what we like and what we don't like. And also, I started okay, so bring you back 10 years ago. I decided to switch to mostly catering. I said, we'll do public events if they're good brand builders, if we know that they're going to be profitable and we know that they're consistent, or if they're going to lead to more catering. So that was what we did public events for. When we switched to catering, the first thing I said was we should be a caterer that does everything because why wouldn't we? And so I started doing plated on a food truck, which was a nightmare. I started doing family style. Every event we did with plated had a new issue. The servers didn't understand where they were going. We were too slow. A table was missed. Oh, a food truck isn't good at doing plated dinners. Like you can use it if you're a caterer and you want to use it as a remote kitchen, but it's a different business than what you know. And that's what a good operator I think does is yes, you could look at a P&L and figure that out, but you could also do that from doing events yourself and being like, this one we didn't make as much money. This one it wasn't a great customer experience. This one was both. Why? It's because we know it and we know it well. You look at the In-N-Out model. In-N-Out model does so much for that business, right? It's what we need to replicate in our business. Like you should have a bread and butter, and if you want to go away from that, if you want to try something different, look at it in the same lens. Is this going to be our bread and butter, or is it not? And like I just talked to our head of marketing today, and she was like, "Hey, I have this really great idea for our wedding clients to do a bride and groom design taco." And I was like, "Man, I love that." As a person who just got married last year on my food truck, like we had a signature cocktail. Why wouldn't we have a signature taco? But then I was like, Krista, who's going to come up with that dish? Where are we going to get those ingredients? How are we going to execute it correctly? And if we can answer all of those, then this is going to be a great thing for us. And so I think that's the rub of being a caterer and looking for opportunities in your business is some things will increase guest experience, which will increase referrals, which will increase repeat bookings, and that has value. And other things won't. And so it's like when you think about your future and you think about catering and you think about finding those profit drivers, some of them are going to lead to a lot more profit in the short term. Some of them are going to lead to more profit in the long term, but you have to have a vision for it and you have to see what works well for you from an operation standpoint, which should lend itself to profitability.
I want to lean into that. I want to talk about momentum. So I think as an entrepreneur, especially a restaurateur, I think it's really easy to get focused on fixing problems, right? Oh, this is a problem. That's a problem. You and I both shuttered businesses in the past. To which I would say, like, as hard as it was to do, like, it was the best decision I could have possibly made, right? Because there wasn't momentum there. The lime truck at one point had brick and mortars. And after doing it for years, it wasn't that it wasn't working, it's that it wasn't working as well as the food trucks. And so at that point, you decided, well, I'm spending equal bandwidth on these two things. This one is going really well. This one's not failing, but it's also not doing as well. Um, I think a lot of us make the mistake of saying, well, I'm not a quitter. I'm not going to quit. When their life would be better served by, again, like, stop trying to fix the thing that people want less and focus on the thing that people want more. But that's a tough pill to swallow. How did you get through it?
There's a question that they ask. They say, if you were to do it all over again, what would you do differently? That's a great question to ask yourself because typically when you are sitting in those moments where you have dead weight in your business or something that's not helping you, if you were to do it again, you wouldn't do it. And I think that's a reminder. For us, it was that same question that you just asked, which was, yeah, we're making about 3 to 5K profit a month, and it's a nightmare of work, and no one's having fun doing it. So why are we doing it?
Right.
And so I think that that's the question you just have to ask yourself. And then, I mean, it's not easy to let go of anything, but in my experience, one door closes, another opens. Like this fire, we lost our house, we lost all of our stuff, we lost everything. I'm trying to rebuild the same thing. Like I was like, oh, I should buy all my favorite clothes that I lost in the fire because I love clothes and they're an expression of me. And then I sat there and I said, that doesn't feel right. It's time to rebuild something new. Like one door closed, another door is going to open. I'm not going to hold on to what I had before. I'm going to look to see what's on the other side of that door because it's going to welcome itself to a new Daniel that was, you know, I think spiritually this was meant to be. And so I feel like that's the thing too is don't hold on to the past. I love that quote. Don't trip on what's behind you. It's just not worth it. And so like,
Yeah.
that's where we're at. And I think that's the hardest part of letting go is accepting that that was is a chapter in your book and it's not going to be anything else anymore.
Don't trip on what's behind you. I'm going to steal that, and maybe I'm going to tell people I got it from you, but probably not. I'm just gonna act like it came to me on a walk one day. If you could go back to the day you launched the Lime Truck, like what advice would you give yourself? Because there are so many people I'm sure that are listening that find themselves in that moment.
It's funny is I actually gave myself this advice when I started the Lime Truck is you'll never have moments like these again. There was a moment where I got kicked out of Trader Joe's for giving samples of the lime truck because I wanted anyone to come eat at that truck, like, and I remember that moment being like, it's kind of embarrassing, kind of awesome, but like also it's something that I loved more than anything. Being on that truck every day was some of my favorite memories. And so being present for it. And then the one thing I really wish I told myself is you only get to build a community once. And I think I took my community for granted. And I think for all my 20s, I took my community for granted. And now I don't. Every one of the people that are in my Rolodex that I care about, I reach out to. I make a point to see. I care about them. And I lost sense of that in my 20s because I wanted to expand and I wanted growth, 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 and that's all I wanted at every cost. And I really think I challenged my community and my network, and I lost my way a little bit. And I think that's something that going through this fire is some perspective that I had, which is, it's really important the company you keep and building those relationships, even when you feel like you have all the friends in the world, like the things that have depth, you got to hold on to those.
When we met, you weren't married. Now you're married, and you have a kid on the way. And you own like 18 businesses that you actively support the operations of. Do you think about balance, especially with like a kid around the corner? And like, what are you doing to build not barriers, right? But like a life that now includes other people?
I don't know. My wife's worried about it. I'm worried about it. I mean, the good news is I have awareness around it, and I also know that my priorities will shift no matter how much I say I want to still be a bit. My business for me is really important, and so I don't want to lose sight of that. But I think there's a way to balance. But I mean, how do you do it? You're the one of the busiest people I know, and you're a great father.
I did the Jeff Bezos thing, and it just worked out really well. So like I just work my business into my life. They're not separate things. My wife is my business partner, and there have been, not days or weeks or months. I mean, there have been years that she's been actively involved in my business. And like in this moment today, she's not involved in the day to day. But she set me up for where we are today. And then I would also say, they're all involved in the process. I'm going to Vegas on a consulting gig this weekend, and I'm bringing them with me, you know? Which is such a blessing. And so I don't, I don't know if I believe in work life separation. I think that you figure out how to build a business that's a great life. Ari Weinswig, again, like I just talked to the dude the other day. Every night he goes and he pours water at the Roadhouse. Every night. The man has an $80 million business, Daniel, and he pours water at the Roadhouse every night. Just because he built a business that he's excited to be in every day.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen anyone with balance. I haven't seen anyone that like shuts off. Oh, I shut off my phone at 5 o'clock and I'm done. What I have tried to do especially over the last 5 years, is create a life where when the phone rings after 5 o'clock, I'm not upset that it rang.
Mm. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah. I always say that I don't want to deal with the emergencies. So that's my way of like, if I don't have to put out fires, I have a lot of control over my schedule and I can have balance. But I mean, I as difficult as the recent times have been and COVID and all these things that we've been dealing with, like I really love my life and I built this life to what I want to do. And I feel like the kid part was the hardest part of it because I knew that everything would change at that point. That's why I've waited so long, to do it. But I think I'm ready for that chapter, and I think that it's you give and you get, right? And so I'm excited to do that. I'm excited to see what the feeling it is to really be selfless with that child. So I'm pretty excited.
Can I share an aside that I think you'll appreciate? You know what was the most surprising part of fatherhood? Is it made me a far more ruthless business person, far more ruthless. Because there are things that I was willing to accept about my business and the people that worked within it when I was single or married that I was no longer willing to accept because, like, that's my child's
Time for
college
bullshit, right?
fund,
Yeah.
right? Like, you're taking out of my child's mouth, you're underperforming, it's negatively going to affect my child's college fund and their life and all of that. And it just had this massive impact on just my worldview and I guess how much BS I was willing to tolerate on a daily or annualized basis. So
I
look
don't mind
forward
that
to
one. I
that.
feel like I'm very, very nice and in business. So maybe that will be a nice little change for me.
Looking forward, obviously there is a bun in the oven, so there's a kid on the way. But like, what's next for you?
I mean, really staying focused to your point. It's like I want to build the businesses that I have to be really great businesses. And I want to help the people there. I wrote an employee manifesto of how I'm going to take care of my people. I've committed going through these fires. I mean, I've been called to service. I've been working on my food trucks, feeding people out of my own pocket while I'm not making any money, and I put this idea together where I was like, from now on, we have more purpose. Like I right now we have a micro grant program and we donate to people $350 in a pair of shoes, but it's inconsistent. So, it's based on how many submissions we get and what the stories are and how much people, my community manager can reach out to. And it's been like every, one month it's 10 people, the next month it's two. I said we need to put a dollar amount, a percentage amount, and we just do that from now on. And that's what the company does. And so I feel like my commitment to community, to giving back to my people, and then building the businesses to be great businesses that have longevity. I think that's the focus. And so that's where I'm at right now. And then I really think that I want to work in, I want to add tech into my repertoire of businesses. So this next year, I'm going to be looking to add tech into the portfolio because that's kind of the last hill to climb. And I think that's going to make me a better operator, a better restaurateur, a better food truck operator, a better, consumer product person. So I'm excited about becoming more well-rounded as a business person.